Think about the biggest sitcoms of the 80s and 90s. You can probably name the theme songs, the catchphrases, and the main characters. But can you say where all those actors are today? We tracked down 14 stars who seemingly fell off the face of the earth after their shows ended. Their stories are surprising, sometimes sad, and will completely change how you watch those old reruns. 1. Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Home Improvement. If you were alive in the 1990s, you knew the name Jonathan Taylor Thomas, or, as he was lovingly called by millions of fans, JTT. As Randy Taylor, the quick-witted, smart-mouthed middle son on the mega-hit sitcom Home Improvement, JTT was more than just a child actor. He was a cultural phenomenon. He was the thinking kid's heartthrob. While his on-screen brothers were known for their brawn or their goofiness, Randy was the one with the clever comebacks and the sensitive side. His face was plastered on every teen magazine, from Tiger Beat to Bop, and he was a guaranteed scream-inducer whenever he appeared on screen. Beyond Home Improvement, JTT was the voice of young Simba in Disney's The Lion King, one of the biggest animated movies of all time. He was on a rocket ship to superstardom, with a future in Hollywood that seemed limitless. Then, in 1998, he did the unthinkable. At the peak of his fame, he chose to leave Home Improvement before its final season. It wasn't for another role or a bigger paycheck. He left to finish high school and focus on his education. After the show, he did a few small roles, but then made an even bigger move. He enrolled at Harvard University, studying philosophy and history. He even spent time studying abroad at St. Andrews University in Scotland. He effectively chose a real life over a Hollywood life. He traded scripts and studio lots for textbooks and lecture halls. Today, he lives a completely private life, rarely making public appearances. He decided the most important role he could play was himself, far away from the cameras. JTT chose books over the big screen. But the next actor on our list found that escaping his famous character wasn't as simple as just walking away. 2. Jaleel White, Family Matters. Did I do that? For 9 seasons, that one question, delivered in a nasally, high-pitched voice, was a cultural earthquake. The character was Steve Urkel, the nerdy, suspender-wearing, clumsy neighbor on Family Matters, and the actor who brought him to life was Jaleel White. Here's the crazy part. Urkel was never supposed to be the main character. He was written as a one-off guest spot, a nerdy kid with a crush on the daughter, Laura Winslow. But the moment Jaleel White walked on, set with those big glasses and that iconic walk, the studio audience exploded with laughter. He was an instant sensation. The network knew they had lightning in a bottle. Urkel quickly went from being a guest star to the show's main attraction. He was a marketing giant, with Urkel dolls, lunchboxes, and even a breakfast cereal called Urkel O's. Jaleel White was suddenly one of the most recognizable actors on television. The problem was, he wasn't Steve Urkel. He was a talented young actor who was now trapped inside a pop culture tornado. As the show went on, he even played other characters, like the suave and handsome Stefan Urquelle, to show his range. But to the world, he was, and always would be, Urkel. When Family Matters ended in 1998, Jaleel found that the role that made him a star had also put him in a box. It was the classic case of crippling typecasting. He struggled to find roles that didn't feel like a shadow of his famous creation. While he has worked consistently in smaller parts, and as a voice actor, he never again reached the level of fame he had as a nerdy teenager. He effectively vanished from the mainstream leading man roles that many expected he would get. While Jaleel White fought to be seen as more than just Urkel, one of his co-stars simply vanished from the show without any explanation at all. 3. Jaimee Foxworth, Family Matters. Every family sitcom has a familiar structure. The mom, the dad, the son, the older daughter, and of course the cute youngest child. For the first 4 seasons of Family Matters, that role was filled by Jaimee Foxworth, who played Judy Winslow, the youngest daughter of Carl and Harriet. She was part of the core family unit, delivering cute lines and reacting to her family's antics. She was there from the very beginning, the sweet little sister in the Winslow household. And then, one day, she wasn't. At the end of season 4, Judy walks upstairs to her room and is never seen or mentioned again. This wasn't a dramatic exit or a big farewell episode. She was completely erased from the show's history. The writers simply pretended the Winslows only ever had 2 children. It's one of the most bizarre and coldest disappearing acts in sitcom history, often cited as a prime example of Chuck Cunningham syndrome, named after a character who vanished from Happy Days. The reported reason was that the producers wanted to give more money and screen time to the breakout star, Jaleel White's Steve Urkel, and Jaimee's character was deemed disposable. For a young actress, this was a devastating professional blow. The experience deeply affected her, and her life after the show was incredibly difficult. She struggled to find other acting work and faced personal and financial hardship. For a time, she worked in the adult film industry under a different name, a decision she later said was born of desperation. In recent years, she has appeared on reality shows to talk about her struggles and is now focused on being a mother to her own son, having finally found a measure of peace after being unceremoniously vanished from her TV family. Jaimee's quiet removal from a hit show was brutal, but for our next actor, leaving the spotlight involved a very loud and public declaration against the very show that made him a millionaire. 4. Angus T. Jones, 2.5 Men. For 10 seasons, Angus T. Jones was the half in the blockbuster sitcom 2.5 Men. He played Jake Harper, the dim-witted but lovable kid living with his neurotic dad John Cryer and his hedonistic, womanizing Uncle Charlie Sheen. Audiences watched him grow up on screen, from a cute 10-year-old boy into a slacker teenager. The show was a ratings monster, one of the biggest comedies in the world, and by the time he was a teenager, Jones was one of the highest-paid child actors in television history, reportedly earning over $350,000 per episode. He had a job that millions would do anything for, a massive fortune, and worldwide fame. Then, in 2012, everything went sideways. In a now infamous video testimonial for a Christian church group, Jones went on a shocking tirade against the very show that had made him rich and famous. He called the show filth and pleaded with people to stop watching it. He talked about his newfound religious faith and how he was no longer comfortable being a part of a show whose humor he felt was at odds with his beliefs. It was a stunning public rebuke from one of its main stars. The producers were caught completely off guard. How can you have a lead actor who is actively telling the audience to change the channel? He was slowly written out of the show, his character joining the army, and he did not return for the final season as a main cast member. After his contract ended, he walked away from Hollywood completely, enrolling in college at the University of Colorado Boulder and living a life far from the spotlight. He has since softened his stance on the show, calling his outburst the result of being a paid hypocrite, but he has never returned to major acting, choosing his faith and a normal life over his multi-million-dollar career. Angus T. Jones walked away from millions for his faith, but for our next star, faith played a very different role, leading him not away from Hollywood, but into a completely different part of it. 5. Kirk Cameron, Growing Pains. In the 1980s, Kirk Cameron was the king of teen idols. As Mike Seaver on the wholesome family sitcom Growing Pains, he was the charming, slightly rebellious but good-hearted oldest son that every girl had a crush on and every boy wanted to be. He was a superstar on a level that's hard to imagine today. His poster was on millions of bedroom walls, and he was a constant presence in magazines and on talk shows. Growing Pains was a top-rated show, and Kirk was its beating heart, winning over audiences with his perfect smile and comic timing. He was at the absolute peak of his fame, with a golden ticket to a long and successful career in mainstream Hollywood. But during the height of his fame, something profound changed in his personal life. Around the age of 17, Cameron became a born-again Christian, and his newfound faith began to dramatically reshape his view of the world and his career. He started to object to storylines on Growing Pains that he felt were too mature or suggestive. According to reports, his convictions caused tension on set, as he allegedly requested changes to scripts and even had a co-star fired over her appearance in Playboy. When the show ended in 1992, he didn't pursue the typical movie star roles that were being offered to him. Instead, he made a conscious and dramatic pivot. He vanished from mainstream Hollywood to dedicate his career almost exclusively to faith-based films and evangelical work. He co-founded The Way of the Master, an evangelical ministry, and has starred in Christian-themed films like the Left Behind series and Fireproof. So while he didn't disappear entirely, he vanished from the Hollywood that made him famous, choosing to build a new career that aligned with his personal beliefs, a world away from the secular sitcom that had once made him a global superstar. Kirk Cameron built a new career by changing his public image, but the next actor's image was shattered by forces completely out of his control, leading to one of the most tragic stories in sitcom history. 6. Max Wright, ALF. The sitcom ALF was one of the strangest and most popular shows of the 1980s. The premise was bonkers. A furry, wisecracking alien from the planet Melmac crash lands in the garage of a typical suburban family, the Tanners. The family patriarch, the perpetually stressed out and flustered social worker Willie Tanner, was played by the talented stage actor Max Wright. While ALF, the puppet, got all the laughs and the catchphrases, it was Wright's performance as the exasperated straight man that grounded the show in some semblance of reality. His job was arguably the hardest on set. He had to act opposite a puppet, a technically demanding and often frustrating process that he openly admitted he hated. He described the show as hard, grim work and said he was hugely eager to have it over with. When the final episode was filmed, he reportedly went to his dressing room, packed his bags, got in his car, and drove away without saying goodbye to anyone. He was done. But the fame of Alf followed him, and his life after the show was marked by a heartbreaking downward spiral. He struggled to find work that would let him escape the shadow of being the dad from Alf, but his true vanishing act was a slow fade, fueled by personal demons. In the early 2000s, tabloids published shocking photos and stories alleging drug use and a hidden life, painting a picture of a man in deep turmoil. He was diagnosed with lymphoma in 1995 and battled the disease for years. His final acting roles were small, and he eventually retreated from public life entirely, his health failing. He passed away in 2019, a tragic end for a gifted actor whose most famous role became a source of personal torment that haunted him until the very end. Max Wright's struggles after fame were a sad secret for years, but for our next star from a later era, her struggles became terrifyingly public. 7. Amanda Bynes, All That, The Amanda Show. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Amanda Bynes was the undisputed queen of kids' comedy. She was a prodigy, a comedic whirlwind who got her start on the Nickelodeon sketch show All That. She was so talented and so popular that Nickelodeon gave her her own show, The Amanda Show, where she played a huge range of hilarious characters, from the ridiculously angry Judge Trudy to the obsessed fan Penelope Taint. She was a brilliant physical comedian with incredible timing, a modern-day Lucille Ball for the younger generation. Her success continued as she grew up, starring in the sitcom What I Like About You and headlining hit movies like She's the Man and Hairspray. She was funny, charming, and seemed destined for a long career as a top comedic actress. Then, around 2010, the laughter stopped. Her vanishing act was not a quiet retreat. It was a very public and difficult period. She abruptly announced her retirement from acting on Twitter, and what followed was a deeply troubling period of bizarre online behavior, legal troubles, a severe mental health challenge, and concerning public appearances. It became clear that she was in the midst of a severe mental health crisis. The bright, bubbly star the world knew had been replaced by a troubled young woman, struggling in the full glare of the public spotlight. For years, she was in and out of psychiatric care and under a legal conservatorship. She has since taken major steps toward recovery, earning an associate's degree from the Fashion Institute of Design, Merchandising. But she has never returned to acting, her once limitless career completely derailed by the immense pressures of childhood fame and the serious mental health battles that followed. Amanda Bynes' journey shows the dark side of child stardom. But what about a child star who didn't crash, but instead became a brilliant lawyer and professor? 8. Charlie Korsmo, Drexel's class. You might not know the name Charlie Korsmo right away, but you definitely know his face. In the early 1990s, he was one of the most recognizable child actors in Hollywood. He wasn't just in any movies, he was in huge ones. He played the son of Robin Williams' character in Hook, the street-smart kid in Dick Tracy alongside Warren Beatty and Madonna, and the star of the comedy Men Don't Leave with Jessica Lange. He was known for playing incredibly smart, often cynical, and wise beyond their years kids. For a brief period, he also starred in the sitcom Drexel's Class, playing the son of the title character. He was on a roll, a brilliant young actor with a unique screen presence. Then, after starring in the 1998 teen comedy Can't Hardly Wait, he just stopped. He was done with acting. But this wasn't a story of burnout or a tragic fall. This was a story of a different kind of ambition. Korsmo, who had always been a gifted student, decided to pursue academics. And he didn't just dabble, he excelled in a way that is almost unheard of for a former child star. He earned a degree in physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT), after working for the Environmental Protection Agency and in Washington, D.C. for the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. He decided to go back to school. In 2006, he graduated from Yale Law School. Today, Charlie Korsmo is a tenured law professor at the Case Western Reserve University School of Law in Cleveland, Ohio, where he is a respected expert in corporate law and finance. It is perhaps the most impressive and unexpected vanishing act in Hollywood history. A famous child actor who walked away from fame, Charlie Korsmo proved you can find incredible success outside of Hollywood. But for another star from the same era's biggest sitcom, just finding peace proved to be a lifelong battle. 9. Lark Voorhies, Saved by the Bell. On Saturday mornings in the early 1990s, millions of kids tuned in to watch the gang at Bayside High, and at the center of that group was Lark Voorhies, who played Lisa Turtle on Saved by the Bell. Lisa was the fashionable, gossip-loving, wealthy best friend to Kellie and Jesse. She was known for her amazing outfits and for constantly shutting down the advances of the nerdy Screech. Lark brought a cool, confident energy to the role, making Lisa a fan favorite. She was part of one of the most iconic casts in teen television history, a show that became a cultural touchstone for a generation. After Saved by the Bell and its spin-offs ended, Lark continued to act, appearing in soap operas like Days of Our Lives and The Bold and the Beautiful, as well as music videos. She was still working, but she never quite broke out into another major defining role. Over time, she began to withdraw more and more from the public eye. Her vanishing act wasn't sudden, but a slow, sad retreat. In the 2010s, her public appearances became rare, and, when she did appear, her behavior and look seemed different, sparking concern among fans. For years, there were rumors and speculation about her well-being. Finally, in 2020, in an interview with Dr. Oz, Lark and her mother revealed that she had been diagnosed with schizoaffective thought disorder, a mental health condition that includes symptoms of both schizophrenia and mood disorders. Her struggles explained her withdrawal from the industry and her sometimes unusual public statements. While she did make a brief, welcome cameo in the Saved by the Bell reboot, she has largely remained out of the spotlight, focusing on managing her health and living a private life away from the pressures of Hollywood. Lark Voorhies' quiet struggles stood in stark contrast to her co-star, whose post-fame life was a series of loud, desperate, and ultimately tragic attempts to stay in the spotlight. 10. Dustin Diamond, Saved by the Bell. There is no character in television history quite like Samuel Screech Powers. As the resident geek of Bayside High on Saved by the Bell, Dustin Diamond played one of the most iconic sidekicks of all time. He was the goofy, loyal, and hopelessly nerdy friend, the punchline to 1,000 jokes, and the character behind some of the show's most memorable physical comedy. Diamond was with the show from its earliest incarnation, Good Morning, Miss Bliss, all the way through the college years and the new class. For over a decade, he was Screech. The character made him famous, but it also became an identity he could never escape. When the show finally ended for him, Diamond found himself in a difficult position. He was universally known, but only as Screech. His post-Bayside life became a public and often painful struggle to find a new identity, or, more often, to cash in on the old one. His vanishing act wasn't from the public, but from the respectable Hollywood he once inhabited. It was a desperate, tragic chase for relevance. He became involved in controversial projects, including an adult-themed video which he later disavowed, and wrote a controversial tell-all book, Behind the Bell, filled with scandalous and largely fabricated stories about his castmates. A decision he later said he deeply regretted. His life was filled with financial problems and legal troubles, including a conviction for disorderly conduct that led to jail time. He seemed to be on a path of self-destruction, alienating the very people who were once his friends. In early 2021, the story took its most tragic turn when he was diagnosed with stage 4 small cell carcinoma. Just 3 weeks later, he passed away at the age of 44, a heartbreaking end for an actor who spent his entire adult life trying and failing to outrun the shadow of his one famous character. Dustin Diamond's tragic path is a cautionary tale about the hunger for fame, but our next actor shows a different side, the quiet dignity of a working man after the Hollywood lights go out. 11. Geoffrey Owens, The Cosby Show. For 8 seasons on The Cosby Show, one of the most dominant and beloved sitcoms of all time, Geoffrey Owens played Elvin Thibodeau. He was introduced as the boyfriend, and later husband, of the eldest Huxtable daughter, Sandra. In the beginning, his character held traditional views on gender roles, which led to many humorous and teachable moments with his progressive father-in-law, Cliff Huxtable. Over time, Elvin evolved into a loving husband and father, running a wilderness store with Sandra. Being on a show as massive as The Cosby Show gave Owens incredible visibility and a steady, high-profile job for years. When the show ended in 1992, Owens, a Yale-educated and classically trained Shakespearean actor, continued to work. He taught acting, appeared in plays, and took guest roles on shows like Law, Order, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He was a working actor, but he wasn't a superstar anymore. Then, in 2018, he vanished from Hollywood anonymity and was thrust back into the national spotlight in a way he never expected. A customer at a Trader Joe's in New Jersey took a photo of him bagging groceries, and the picture went viral. Some outlets framed it as a shocking fall from grace. Cosby Show star now works at a grocery store. But something amazing happened. The public and the acting community rallied around him, not with pity, but with respect. They celebrated him as a man who was doing an honest day's work to support his family, shaming the idea that any job is less than another. The incident highlighted the reality for most actors. Life isn't always red carpets and big paychecks. In the wake of the story, Tyler Perry offered him a role on a TV show, and he received a surge of new acting offers. His vanishing and unexpected reappearance became a powerful conversation about the dignity of work and the true nature of life in the arts. Geoffrey Owens found grace in an ordinary job. But his on-screen sister-in-law chose a different path, stepping back completely to embrace the role of a lifetime, being a mom. 12. Kellie Shanygne Williams, Family Matters. As Laura Winslow on Family Matters, Kellie Shanygne Williams was the quintessential girl next door. For 9 seasons, she was the smart, popular, and often exasperated object of Steve Urkel's affections. While Urkel became the show's comedic focus, Laura was its heart. The will they or won't they storyline between the beautiful, popular girl and the nerdy genius next door was the emotional core of the series for years. Audiences watched Laura grow from a teenager dealing with high school drama to a young woman navigating college and love. Williams played the role with a perfect blend of sweetness and annoyance, making her a relatable and beloved character on one of the 90s biggest sitcoms. When Family Matters ended its long run, Williams didn't immediately fall off the map. She hosted a show for the Style Network and took on a few acting roles in shows like Moesha and The Parkers. She was still in the business, But she wasn't chasing the Hollywood A-list dream with the same intensity as some of her peers. Then, in 2009, she made a choice that would lead to her quiet vanishing act from the public eye. She married Hannibal Jackson, a former military member, and settled down. She had her first child in 2010 and her second in 2012. Her choice was simple and profound. She chose family over fame. She stepped away from the cameras and the audition circuit to focus on being a wife and a mother. Today, she is heavily involved in her community, having co-created a program with her husband to support young people interested in the arts. While she occasionally reunites with her Family Matters castmates for nostalgic appearances, she has fully embraced a life outside of Hollywood, finding her greatest role in her own home, far from any television studio. Kellie Williams happily traded scripts for school runs, but her TV brother had a much rockier path after the show ended, fighting his own family for his fortune. 13. Taran Noah Smith, Home Improvement. On Home Improvement, Tim the Toolman Taylor had 3 sons. The oldest was the jock, the middle was the brain, and the youngest was Mark, played by Taran Noah Smith. He was just 7 years old when the show began, and audiences watched him grow up on screen. Mark was the sweet, often sensitive youngest child who was sometimes picked on by his older brothers. Smith spent 8 years, the bulk of his childhood, on the set of one of the most watched shows in America. He was a familiar face in millions of homes, a part of a beloved television family. But growing up in the spotlight came with a heavy price. When the show ended in 1999, Smith was 16 years old and had a trust fund worth a reported $1.5 million. He had no desire to continue acting and felt that his parents were pushing him to stay in the business. What followed was a messy and public legal battle. At 17, he sued his own parents for control of his trust fund, alleging mismanagement of his funds. The situation became even more complicated when, at the same age, he married a woman who was 16 years older than him. The marriage and the lawsuit caused a major rift with his family and made headlines. His vanishing act was a rebellion against the very childhood fame that made him rich. He wanted out. He and his wife started a business making vegan cheese and ran an art gallery for a time. The marriage eventually ended in divorce, and he has since reconciled with his parents. In recent years, he has lived a very private life, working with disaster relief organizations and getting involved in projects far removed from Hollywood, having fought for and won a normal life after a very abnormal childhood. Taran Noah Smith's fight for independence was a classic child actor story, but for another 80s kid, growing up meant leaving the spotlight to rock out on a completely different stage. 14. Tina Yothers, Family Ties. The Keaton family from Family Ties was the perfect picture of the 1980s culture clash. You had the ex-hippie parents, the young Republican son Alex Michael J. Fox, and the fashion-obsessed daughter Mallory. And then there was the youngest, Jennifer Keaton, played by Tina Yothers. She was the smart, down-to-earth tomboy who often seemed like the most sensible person in the house. Yothers was just 9 when the show started, and for 7 seasons, she was America's little sister. She was a core part of a show that defined a decade, holding her own against a comedy powerhouse like Michael J. Fox. As the show was ending, Yothers did something completely unexpected that signaled her future path. She wrote a book called Being Your Best, offering advice to teens, and she also started a band. This wasn't a pop act designed to cash in on her fame. It was a gritty rock band called Jaded, with her on lead vocals. When Family Ties ended, she didn't aggressively pursue the life of a former child star. Her vanishing act was a pivot from the polished world of sitcoms to the raw energy of rock and roll. She played in clubs, toured with her band, and dyed her blonde hair black, completely shedding the wholesome image of Jennifer Keaton. While she has appeared in a few reality shows like Celebrity Fit Club and has done some theater, she never returned to full-time acting. She married, had children, and has spent most of her adult life focused on her family and her music, proving that the quietest Keaton had the heart of a rock star all along.